So Adil, new properties coming on board are booking really quickly and filling up. And one of the things that we're trying to work on operationally is how do we help hosts who have existing properties that have been on for several years, and let's say 2 out of 6 rooms or 2 out of 7 rooms come up, um, and a member moves out. So, what are you seeing in Houston around the bookability for existing properties online?
Yeah, I want to say, especially in Houston, just because Houston has had some properties that are 3 or 4 years old. It's less about those properties, those older properties not getting booked, and more about the fact that they don't stay booked. So the fact that the room number 6 at this 4-year old property does come online, the room does get booked, but the member immediately realizes that, hey, the pictures that I saw were not really true, and where the pictures that are in the listing are from a recently renovated house, but I'm coming into a house and a bedroom which is 4 years old and has stain and has holes and is not being maintained. So they come to support and they say that, hey, this is not what I booked. And when we verify that, we want to make sure that those members are taken care of. So we send them to other hosts that are taking care of their properties, or are updating their listing. So that is one of the bigger factors where I feel like these older properties are at a disadvantage. And what a good host are doing right now is making sure they every other year they either make sure their house is clean, painted, whatever, or they're updating their pictures just to make sure we're not catfishing anyone, just to make sure we're not baiting and switching.
Got it. That's really interesting because I think Atlanta and Houston, probably out of all of our markets, share that same challenge where we're multi years into this marketplace. So we have supply that runs the full gamut, 4 years old to 7 days old. So one of the things that's really interesting is when I talk to hosts about this issue, they're meeting the member expectations when they go to book the room. And how are their expectations set versus what they get when they're seeing there? You used the term catfish. So if I was an existing host with an existing portfolio, what are 3 suggestions so that I can meet the member's expectation?
So first off, whenever you're flipping the room, make sure all the furniture is there. It's crazy that I have to bring this up because new hosts rarely have this issue, but older hosts, kind of, especially the ones with larger portfolios, tend to underestimate the fact that some of their rooms really need some attention. They really need maybe a repaint, maybe there's some stains on the wall, maybe the room actually looks bad. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So all those things, making sure whenever you're flipping a room in older properties, make sure that the house actually looks livable and it looks welcoming and it's not, deteriorating essentially.
I love that. So I did this exercise with a host recently where we did a deep dive into one of his houses that was having hard time with maintaining move-ins. Because from the platform side, right? You and I are both hosts on the platform. We're investors, but we spend our day job working on the operations. And one of the things that was a surprise to the individual host was we compared a picture of the property and the room compared to what the listing was. To your point, major catfish. So one of the things that is beautiful is that we have hosts that understand, hey, I want to take professional photos. I want to put my best foot forward. And interestingly part is the member only sees what the listing says. So on the listing itself, it talked about shared bathroom. It talked about, the amenities in the room, but he was missing 3 things that were listed as being in the room: a dresser, a nightstand, a lamp, bed frame, mattress cover. These are all things that were on the generic listing. And he just never went back to true up what's actually in the room versus what the member's moving into. So once we shed light on that, now he started getting a different perspective. That's why these members are booking the room. And then when they get there, they're like, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. So this disconnect between expectations and reality, that's happening.
Yeah. One more key intervention I feel like is, it always comes, since we are in the people business, it all comes back to communication.
Mhm.
Making sure whenever a member is moving in, especially for larger portfolios, older properties, I'm sure they have property managers in place, making sure you're holding them accountable for communication. Because if you're having a conversation with any person who moves in, if you can kind of, talk to them and make sure their expectations are met, and if they're not, how you can do better, that really goes a long way. For properties that are older, that are still, sustaining their occupancy and tenure, the key is communication. If a member moves in and they reached out to PadSplit support, it's already too late. Because PadSplit support is going to take care of them and make sure they move out to a different property where their needs are going to be met. But if it actually gets there, it's already too late. So what you need to do is, again, for a good property manager, send out comms that, hey, reach out to me if you have any issues with your move-in. That really goes a long way. You would be surprised how many times, it's as simple as, hey, I have a Schlage lock in the front door, and the member didn't realize that once they enter the code, they have to press the Schlage button. Small things like that. Just being there, just making sure, because it's a big step for them. They're doing this completely contactless, completely, remote. They have not seen any person. They don't know until they actually move into their room with their stuff. They don't know if it's a scam or not. That's how crazy it is. So making sure you're there to at least let them know that, hey, if you have concerns, I can resolve.
That is such a great point because members who we love that stay within our platform, but they'll have experience. So they'll know how to use a digital lock because in their previous house, if they transferred in, it was similar, whether it was Yale, Slage, Eufy, it doesn't matter what the brand name is, right? The mechanism is typically the same. Jack, one of our coworkers down in Florida, he came up with a fantastic learning from a host. Is they're putting QR codes with little shot videos above each lock, whether it's the door or whether it's the actual front door, which is this is how to use the door lock. Because for a good portion of our members, they're brand new, right? They've never really done co-living before, but the value of coming into a co-living situation where they're paying $800 a month versus $2,000 a month, um, it's worth it for them. But how do we get the empathetic view of what a member's experience is? How do we improve the member's experience? I thought that was a gem, is putting a QR code with a video direction on how to use the lock specifically there. Love that. Okay, so let's get into the good hosts, right? The hosts that are good operators. Gosh, we love good operators because the better the operator, the better the business, the less crazy and resentment and sorrow and sadness that you and I have to deal with because they're not getting the revenue that they expected off this investment. So little subtle things. So let's get into host tools. What specific host tools? So when you said communication, we actually, as the platform, collect a ton of data. So when members move in, what happens? So let's talk and educate hosts on what happens through the member experience. Because unlike you and I, which we're kind of over the top, we've never. Most of our hosts don't put themselves in the shoes of a member to kind of learn the member experience. So when a member from the beginning, let's talk through the member experience from the beginning and all the data that we collect and how it's useful for the hosts in terms of tools.
Right. So for any host, the biggest thing they need to understand is and this is something that I've learned from other really good operators, because this was not, my initial intuition, but really good operators quickly understood that this is not a real estate business anymore. This is a hospitality business. So if you're looking at all of your operations through that lens, you're going to be successful. And we, as a platform, early on pivoted and made sure we are catering to those hospitality needs. So all of our PadSplit tools on your host dashboard are garnered towards you being a hospitality professional. So what that means is, communication being the first thing. what are your members seeing, what they don't like, those being second, feedback, third, all these things are already built in your platform. So if a member initially comes to the website and they want to book a room, they see a listing. They first off, they go to the map and they kind of, this is just, majority of the members. This is not all of them. Everyone has a different experience, but essentially they have a really good idea of where they want to move in, usually closer to their work or closer to their family. They understand that, hey, this is the general area where I want to move in, and all these options, all these properties are my options that are giving me a room at $160 a week, $170 a week, $200 a week. Now, if some members are picky, they can kind of filter through. They can understand that, hey, do I need a private bathroom? Do I need a private entrance? Do I need X? Do I need Y? All of these things they can kind of filter out. But off of that, they're left with 4 or 5 properties that seem to be a perfect fit for them. Now, when they click on the property, so they understand that, hey, this is the location where I want to move in. I have these 5 options. The first thing that they would want to shortlist these 5 properties off of is going to be the pricing. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So they understand that, hey, if I have a room at 170 and I have another room at 165, $5 is not that big of a difference, but in a member's eyes, they want to make sure they're getting the best deal.
Yeah.
So they're already leaning towards the property with 165. So you kind of, if you want to price yourself at 170, you kind of have to make sure that your listing is standing out. Now, the second thing is when you click on these listings, you click on it, you go through, first things you see are the pictures. And sure, if your house is, set up really good with really nice furniture and everything is perfect, but if you took your pictures from your phone with bad lighting, it's always going to lose to properties that have nicer photos. That's something that has been tried and tested. I've made a case that, hey, that's not always true, blah, blah, but I've always been proven wrong. Pictures always triumph. Having said that, you come in, you have these nicer photos that are kind of showcasing what the kitchen looks like, what the bathrooms look like, and then, making sure the bedrooms are not just a box, but actually feel like a room. That's when, you're kind of already on the winning side. Off of that, when a person likes a specific property, they like a specific bedroom, they like the pricing, they click on book a room. They go through this elaborate, and this is, for new members, they go through an elaborate application process where we run background checks, income verification. We make sure who they are, they say they are. And once approved, they are allowed to book that room. So any person who is an applicant in one of your properties, in one of your bedrooms, you're going to see, and this is a feature that we have, you can choose to enable or disable it. But if you enable this feature, any applicant that tries to move into your property, you're going to get a quick application that, hey, this is this person. We're going to try to hide as many things as we can for fair housing laws, sanity. But outside of that, you're going to see who they are, how much they're approved for, and sometimes, what their jobs are and whatnot. And a small note from those members. So typically when a member tries to book a room, they leave a note that, hey, I am moving into this area because I work close by, blah, blah. Once you approve them, they get their address, they get the move-in instructions, and they're allowed to move in the next day. They come in, they're allowed a specific unique code that you allotted them for their front door, for their bedrooms. They come in, it's all contactless. They don't expect anyone to be there, anyone to greet them. They come in, use their codes, get in the house, get in their rooms, and settle in. That's a typical member journey.
Okay.
Now, when we initially talked about the fact that communication is key, we want to make sure that we're communicating all of, in all the, efficient ways we can. Because any member who's moving to your property, if they already have a relation with you, they're going to stay longer. That's what we've learned in the past. And that's, a tried and tested thing in hospitality in general. So whenever a person books a room, whenever they leave a small note that, hey, I'm moving in here because I have a job close by, and I replied to them, that's great. My house is about 5 miles from this property. I just want to make sure you're okay with it. I don't have any best stops close by. I hope that you're okay with that. Outside of that, if you have any questions, please let me know about the property itself. I'd love to answer before you move in, stuff like that. And on the day of the move in, just a quick message that, hey, I know you're moving in today. If you have any questions, please make sure to reach out to me. I'd love to resolve. I'm going to try to be here as much as I can. Let me know. Once they move in, if they texted you back that, hey, I just moved into the property, no issues, I love it, this person is going to stay for as long as they want, as long as they need to, which is, in our system, it tends to be between 8 or 9 months. So you want to make sure that you're checkboxing all of these interventions to make sure your tenure is secured for that 8 or 9 month.
Yeah. Especially for brand new houses, because this is a great hack. When I get the move-in message from a member that says, I liked your house, it's really close to where I work. I happen to be a manager at a warehouse distribution center, or the gentleman that I just spoke to, he was a manager for a call center. And immediately the response was, in my mind, as a business owner, I want 5 more of your coworkers. Because I immediately said, welcome to the house. I'm really glad that it's convenient to where you work. I want to make sure that we're on the same page. These are the expectations of what co-living is. And I know that we have the written document that says the 5 major basic rules, but when I reiterate it in a conversation and I get that person to say yes, then there's a verbal acceptance of like, this is what's expected in the house. And the feedback from members was, I love that you asked me that, because then I realized you're asking everybody else who's moving in that these are the same questions that I'm asking.
Yep.
So the expectation is set really early on. And when you talked about communication, because we're such an automated system, we have several hosts that just opt out. We just let the system send the text messages as it is. The best operators are the ones that humanize what we do. So they talk about it. Hey, I have a phone call with the member coming inbound. I want them to know it's a human on the other side. I set this conversation and seek ways that I can improve for them. And then the other piece is, to your point, the member communication is established that it's a human who operates this. It's not a business. It's a small business. It's a mom and pop business, but it's somebody that is going to care about your responses and not allow it to just be a box where it's really easy to offend a box. It's harder to when you know that there's a human on the other side. And it just sounds so crazy, but that's just the human natures of it, right? So
that's true. And it's funny because that's always been the case. Versus recently, when I saw these larger operators, these larger property managers, sure, they're managing 80, 90 properties, but they're still able to humanize this aspect of their business, where their initial conversations are actually genuine. After that, it's all copy paste, sure. But early on, they want to make sure that they understand who's moving in, and they want to make sure that the members understand that there's a system to all of this.
Yeah. And there's expectations that are set early. And I think I love that. So let's get in deeper into the tools. I'm a host and I have a thirst for continuous improvement. If a member completes their move-in experience, what happens and how do I get that feedback?
Right. So initially we talked about the conversations, the communication. That's something that is built in the website and also on the app. So the PadSplit app for hosts is just communication centric. It's all it does. Make sure that it's giving you pop-up notifications, that if you're on the go, you still understand, you still see all the messages that are coming in from members, if any. After that, the second thing that you kind of see from members is the member move-in feedback. So if you click on your dashboard and if you go to metrics, there's a section for ratings. If you click on ratings, you're going to be able to see how your property is doing in terms of ratings from other members. And if you scroll down, it actually shows you move-in ratings. So any person who moved in, how was their experience? If they would like anything improved, or if they didn't like anything, or if they loved something that you can double down on. So all of those things are going to be at the bottom of the rating section under member move-in ratings.
So the member gives you a thumbs up or they give you a thumbs down.
Right.
But what the valuable part of this part of our app and our product is that there's a comment section. So we know from aggregated data view of the entire market, 3 major things cause bad move-ins. You want to go and expand on those, then how to avoid them?
Yeah, so the 3 biggest things that we see members often complain about is, them moving into a house where the house is dirty, their room is not clean, or they had some move-in issues. That usually means that their codes weren't working, or the lock was faulty, or when they moved in, it was confusing because instructions weren't there. All of this can be taken care of in 2 simple ways. Whenever you flip a room, make sure the room is clean, make sure it's ready for a new person to move in. When we early on we talked about all the furniture being there and whatnot. And the second thing being the communication, early communication, making sure members come to you if they have any move-in concerns. That's going to set you up for success. One really important tool that I love talking about with Host is our listing metrics. In your Host dashboard, you go to metrics, you click on listings. It tells you how your property is doing versus what the norm is for your market.
In terms of views.
In terms of views.
Yes. Yeah, this is your outbound expression to the world, right? This is what people's feedback on, is your listing attractive or not? And we use this data to say what?
So if anyone has a question around, hey, my room is not filling, you can probably find your answer in that specific tab. So what it tells you is that your property needs about 200 views to book a room versus national average or your market average is 100 views per room. If you scroll down, it tells you how many views you're getting. And if it tells you that, hey, in the past 7 days, you had about 200 views, but no bookings. So that kind of tells you that that people really like where your property is. They're trying to book it, but once they click on it, either they don't like the pictures or they don't like the pricing. Early on, we talked about the fact that, hey, once people jolt down where they want to move into, then they shortlist all of their properties based on pictures and pricing. So if your property has a lot of views and no bookings, more than likely it's because of a factor of one of these 2 things. Either your pictures are not right, or there's something in your pricing that needs to be improved.
That's gold, a deal.
That's
gold.
That's something that honestly, when hosts ask us that, hey, why do you have any tips on why our rooms are not booking? That's all we do. We just go into that tab and we understand what's happening in the market. With all of that context, we just understand, what this graph tells us.
Yep.
Sure, if you don't have views, that's a bigger problem. That means your property is in a location where people are not looking for houses, or something along those lines. But if you are getting views, it's usually a factor of either of these 2 things.
Right. Your photos or your pricing doesn't meet the expectations of what the member has. That's amazing.
These are the 2 of the most important things that I like to talk about whenever I talk about the Host platform. Third thing being the app itself, because I use the app for all the member communication, sure, ticket management as well, but member communication primarily. If you kind of have a really good grasp on all of these 3 features, you're setting yourself up for success. You're more than likely going to succeed on a platform, because the listing is going to tell you what's wrong in the listing. A metric is going to tell you what's wrong in your listing. The communication messenger is going to tell you what you can do to improve your tenure. And the rating is going to tell you if there's anything that needs to be improved in the property itself.
That's amazing. All right, we're running out of time, Adil. Thank you for dropping so much knowledge. I can't wait to have you back on again and then drop more pieces of gold.
So thanks. I look forward to it, Kenan. Thank you very much. Talk soon.
Thanks, Adil.